Internet aus dem All. Was futuristisch klingt, soll in Europa bald Wirklichkeit werden. Gerade erst gestern hat EU-Kommissar Thierry Breton bekundet, dass er mit Werft dieses Projekt vorantreiben soll. Doch wie genau kann es funktionieren? Was wird es kosten? Und wer stemmt sich bisher noch dagegen? All diesen Fragen wollen wir heute bei dieser Veranstaltung live aus der Landesvertretung Hessen nachgehen. Herzlich willkommen, wo auch immer Sie uns zuschauen. Ich freue mich, dass Sie den Weg zu uns gefunden haben. Ja, es ist ein ganz, ganz großes Projekt, was sich die EU-Kommission auf die Fahnen geschrieben hat. Anfang Februar sollen konkrete Vorschläge dazu auf den Tisch kommen. Wir haben viel zu besprechen. Als erstes möchte ich übergeben zur Europaministerin Lucia Puttrich nach Wiesbaden.
Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, liebe Gäste, eine der wichtigsten Lehren aus der Covid-19-Pandemie
is that digitalization can bring people together. Digital infrastructure allows us communication wherever you might be in the world. This allows us a new kind of working in your daily work, at your studies or at home. Digitalization enables us to make contacts and advantages for all of us. A basic prerequisite for this positive vision of the future is connectivity. Gigabit connections for companies, data infrastructures for cloud computing, and data processing will be needed. Schools and universities need powerful networks for e-education, as does the new e-health sector. People in home offices are just as dependent on connectivity as public administrations, which are becoming increasingly digital. These new live connections of digitalization on a very high technical performance level have to be assured, and this is a major challenge. Hessen is part of the best covered areas of the Federal Republic. But in Europe, we are not at the level we would like to reach. For that, we need innovative solutions to connect Europe well digitally. The terrestrial infrastructure is crucial for this, but we should use other technologies as well. Satellite, the so-called satellite internet can be a useful complement to terrestrial lines in remote areas, but also as an alternative when terrestrial connections fail, for example, in the case of natural disasters. Access to space and the satellite business were long considered as a domain of governments and their space agencies. That has changed. Satellites have become smaller and cheaper, and rockets as transporters have become cheaper as well. Startups and new companies are entering this market. A lot of things are going on in the space. A hive of activity. In 2020 alone, almost 1,300 new satellites were launched into space, the highest figure in the history of space travel. This opens up new fields of application. Hessen is a major location for this activity. With our ESA connections, the European Organization for the Usage of Meteorological Satellites, as well as the Center of Satellite Navigation Hessen, we have central players in our region. This position has to be secured and extended, and this is a task of the first space coordinator for the Hessen government, Professor Dr. Johann Dietrich Wörner. Together with all actors in Hessen, he will develop a space strategy in Hessen focused on national and European space activity. The present developments in satellite communication are quite impressive. It is important that Europe really takes up these new technological development and stays close to the newest developments. As for other technologies as well, we have to make sure here that the EU is positioned in an adequate way on a strategic level in order to stay connected with the worldwide developments. Today's live stream from a regional presentation in Brussels is addressing a strategically very present topic of the future. So I wish to all of you an exciting discussion with new insights that will also enrich the legislative process at European level. Well, when an innovative entrepreneur like Elon Musk, a Tesla boss, by the way, is getting involved, it really has to be interesting. We can see that internet from space is possibly an alternative or an additional infrastructure for broadband extension. Internet from space can render us more independent from broadband networks in cases of natural disasters, as last year in July, for instance. It could become disconnected and we have problems. There's all kinds of facets that we would like to have a closer look at. In Wiesbaden, I would like to welcome one of the hosts of today's event, Minister Professor Dr. Kristina Sinemus, Minister for Digital Strategy and Innovation of the state of Hessen. You are involved here as well because this is a matter close to your heart. What's important for you for today's topic? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Mrs. Wettach, the panel members, I'm really happy that at least on a virtual level we are able to connect thanks to digital technology. And maybe satellite technology has been involved here, allowing a better transmission into more remote regions. Who knows? You've mentioned the basic term. In July of last year, the U.S.-American entrepreneur Elon Musk has announced that from his company Starlink, the satellite internet made available would from August 21 available on a worldwide level. He was expecting more than 500,000 clients. Well, ladies and gentlemen, within just 1 year, satellite broadband to serve on the internet, this is certainly one option amongst others. But I think it's going to be taking a little bit more time before we can use this opportunity on a regular basis. Almost at the same time, the regional government of Rhineland-Palatinate has indicated, you've seen as well, linked to the natural disaster in a region of the land where the infrastructure was destroyed. 12 satellite dishes have been installed. People could stay connected locally thanks to the Wi-Fi network made available. And this shows two aspects of interest for today's discussion as well, in my view. On the one hand, we have the long-term option or the option of a global communication infrastructure topic via satellite-based internet. On the other hand, also the possibility to have satellite technologies used as interim or bridging technology with the extended usage, as in the case of the floodings and the natural disaster, and to substitute other networks when digital infrastructures have been destroyed in such a natural disaster situation. Both topics are taken up in Hessen as well, and I'm really happy that we have a discussion about this today. In Hessen, we are very well positioned. My colleague, Mrs. Puttrich, has mentioned Professor Dr. Jan-Dietrich Wörtner, my former high school or university president, who's involved now via ESAC in this matter as well, and known as one of the responsible persons on the European level, based here in Hessen, for the European and worldwide space strategy in this area, where satellites are one part of the solutions. And he's implementing this as well. Why in Hessen and why in my home city, Darmstadt? And Professor Werner comes from there as well. Well, the ESOC is based there. And I don't know whether one of you has been able to see this when a satellite is being launched into space. I had the privilege to be there once. And even if you have a look at the way a satellite is presented, Rosetta or something comparable, it's quite impressive already. But you can see as well that the usage from Darmstadt will be controlled for the whole of Europe. So major aspects who have ESOC, EUMETSAT, and the Center for Satellite Navigation, Hesse, CESA. So these are advantages for our location in this area, and we would like to talk about this and extend it up to the European level as well. Because in our new digital strategy, I've prepared one copy here, Digital Hessen, Satellites for Tomorrow. Well, satellite technology is one of the basic tasks in our Vision 2030 as well, with a satellite internet as a global communication infrastructure, but also in the area of connectivity for remote areas. to the IoT, Internet of Things, autonomous driving as well for cars, and an element for public administration's protection against sabotage or cybersecurity in the area of agriculture, amongst others. We need all this. We need a high level of resilience for the IT infrastructures, and satellite technology is one momentum here. We need a high level of connectivity to be created in the agriculturally remote areas, rural areas as well, and we need it as well for mobility purposes like autonomous driving. So Hessen is well positioned here, and we are actively involved in this topical area. And we'd like to talk about this with you as well today. How can we make sure that European satellite-based internet is advanced? You just said that the Commission will be discussing about this very soon. And what do we need in order to make sure that technological options are used at the best possible level? How can we get actively involved from Hessen in Europe in order to make sure that on the long run, and this is an objective for all of us, in this area we need a European positioning in this area and not be completely dependent on the US of A or China and leave this area just for these two major players. We need very well positioned European community for this technology, better involved and more precisely focused on these areas. And that would be really positive to know that you are joining in this fight to make Europe a better space location. We are already well positioned, but maybe our voice is not heard strong enough. So this has generated my interest here, my curiosity. I haven't seen how it takes place when a rocket launches satellites into space. I'm going to have a look on the internet to see whether I can find a video on this. And thanks as well for your basic introduction and the opening statement. It's really important in this discussion to differentiate here between the long-term major system that we want to install and the short-term solutions that we need beforehand in the cases of natural disasters as the floodings last year. So I'm really looking forward now to introduce the panel members for our discussion. We have connected here from the EU Commission Christoph Kautz from the Directorate-General for Defense, Industry and Space. Mr. Kautz is Deputy Director there, and he's been involved in this area for quite a while now, all these space matters, if I might say, in Berlin at the BDI, the Federation of German Industries, connected the expert on the executive board level for all digital matters, Plöger. Then I'm really happy that in Hessen we have connected one expert in this area from the practical side, a practitioner, if I may so, Sven Sünberg. He's managing director for Media Broadcast Satellite GmbH, a company that is very strongly involved in this area already and very concretely in Usingen in Hessen, not far away from Frankfurt. You are connecting a satellite system with more than 135 antennas. So you know what the technical side actually means. And as last panel member, I'd like to welcome in Berlin the expert for geopolitical matters. Always when we're talking about space, we have to take into account the geopolitical aspect of it all, the Sputnik effect. Well, that was quite a while ago, but for all space matters, the concept of power is always very close. So warm welcome to Daniel Voelsen as well. Well, Mr. Kautz, I told our auditors initially that in February the Commission will present a proposal for satellite-based internet. Now, you cannot anticipate concerning the content. That's a matter for other people. But you could give us still a very good impression of what areas will be covered in this proposal, giving us a first insight, a first impression of it, what might be coming up. Well, thank you very much, first of all. Thank you for your kind invitation. For starters, I'm quite willing to give you a little bit of an overview concerning what is intended here. Maybe we can move one step back to start with and have a look at what our initial observation has been. What is the problem we want to cover with this? A few key elements have been mentioned already. and I can take them up again if I might. First of all, we are observing that the functioning of our economy, but also of our state-based authorities and our security are increasingly depending on connectivity. And the demand for services concerning security and resilience to be improved, and this demand is increasing strongly right now. And there's a very interesting report, if you have time to have a look at it, from the Commission called Strategic Foresight Report, and indicated as one of the 10 megatrends of the coming years is the hyperconnectivity concept. In other words, connectivity is there to stay and you need to cover it. I would like to split the topic up in different areas. What's the need on the public side and what will happen then on the commercial level as well. First of all, concerning the public side, so the need for quantitative and qualitative higher level communication services, especially satellite-based communication services. Well, this demand is increasing on a permanent level. Higher and better security standards, higher broadband, lower latency times, and so on and so forth. And right now we can see that with the existing satellite communication services that we have, from state-side communication services as well, we are not able to cover these increasing demands. If I have a look at the commercial level then, in the second step, we can see that there is a new and interesting area, economically interesting as well. Satellite internet has been mentioned. Elon Musk has mentioned that, obviously. And the observation here is that this is mainly happening outside of Europe. And if I might come back to the strategic level as well, to end this overview, global satellite connectivity is today certainly an area of strategic importance. It is important for security and protection, and it's also about technological sovereignty. So if you like, this is our initial observation as a basis. What about the objective of this proposal? Now we are still developing right now. Well, as indicated, you might distinguish three objectives here as well. If I have a look, first of all, at the public side, state side demand, solutions and services have to be offered that show a high level of resilience. And one major aspect was mentioned by Mrs. Minister, high level of resilience, be able to cope with peaks in usage and fulfilling the demands from the sides of the public authorities concerning satellite communication. Then, on the commercial level, as a second element, well, here it is about allowing for an opportunity that the private sector is also involved in this initiative in view of a way of allowing at least or making sure that the private sector is also put in a situation where high-speed broadband communications can be offered on a satellite-based system. And on the strategic level, the objective of our proposal is also that all these needs are being covered in Europe. Or in other words, that we are not depending too strongly on third-party solutions. If I might add what has been done until today, in 2020, we've had, if you like, a fact-finding phase. A major study was launched to see what such a constellation could look like from a technological point of view, the architecture of the system, the security elements to be involved as well, what operating or operator models could be envisaged, and what the cost might be. Recently, two additional studies have been launched as well. Studies that have been launched particularly at SMEs and startups. As far as possible, we would like to take up the innovative potential and the very creative ideas that startups and SMEs have precisely in this area. from the procedural point of view, if I may add this additional remark, we've been working on a legislative proposal at the same time to propose a program for secure connectivity via satellites. And this proposal is in its final drafting phase right now, almost ready, in other words. And this proposal includes objectives of such a program, which I have explained a little bit already. And then the proposal will include also the development. So in other words, who will do what, who will be responsible for what areas. And it's about the areas of responsibility for the Commission, for the member states, ESA, EUSTAT, for those. EUSPA is our space agency based in Prague, and there will also be aspects in the draft concerning the supply model to get all this and what the budget will have to be in order to be able to cover all needs of this initiative. So in broad lines, this would be what we are working on right now. Thank you very much. This sounds quite nice and interesting if you indicate that the objective is to cover the European needs as a matter of fact and not be dependent on offers from third countries. For you on the screen, one more indication from my side. Quite evidently, you can ask your questions as well. You can mail on the streamline at lv-brussel with ue.hessen.e or give us a call at 32 for Belgium 472030181. Well, Mrs. Plöger, BDI, Federation of German Industries, would wish for more commitment from Germany in Brussels in view of this major area of space and from Europe in general as well, more presence in space. What you just heard from the Commission, what's your point of view here? Well, thank you first of all for your kind invitation today, allowing us to have a discussion about this very important topic here today. We've been involved here at the BDI level for quite a while with a new space initiative that has been founded for that very purpose. The needs area has been mentioned already. Digital infrastructure, we've been talking for years now. New coalition agreement here in Germany has taken this up again, but the figures are still not really impressive right now. We have only 90% of households having a connection with more than 100 Mbit per second right now. And these are in the major city areas. Minister Sinemus has indicated this very clearly as well. Rural areas are disadvantaged in a major way still. And we have a coverage of only 70% more or less. So we need this additional component of broadband satellite technology from space in order to be able to cover our basic needs, not only in Corona times where we have a lot of virtual meetings additionally, but from my perspective as well, in order to cover the industry-based needs for lots and lots of applications. We've heard about mobility applications already. Industry 3.0 has been mentioned with an interlinkage of processes as well, and for the possibility to have sustainability objectives in climate and environmental areas to be covered as well. So it's a really important topic that we have to cover initially. But it's also about the competence and skills to produce these satellites. The figures are still quite sobering, even if we have ambitious objectives that were just mentioned. Status quo is that in the production of satellite technology, we are far behind major players as US, China, or also Russia. We have to cover this lagging behind here in order to transport our technology to the whole world and to use the data that can be generated here as well. And satellites producing this data, well, they want to have the data sovereignty shared by them as well. So it's a matter of sovereignty and strategic areas. In Germany, we had a lot of discussions about 5G, but the awareness within society and industry as well that we need a higher level of strategic sovereignty in the key technologies of digitalization is quite obvious. And this project can deliver an important contribution to that as well. Well, I'd like to take up the topic of competence increasing. We have to cover the distance to where we're lagging behind as compared to the US and China. Is it possible to cover this area? Well, we have the head in the sand strategy. This is too late. The train has gone. Impossible to cover this. No, it is possible, but we have to develop here a collective effort and cooperation between the public and the private sectors. How can we make sure that we get a draft here creating necessary incentives? We need a launching funding. We need a strong demand from the public side, but we need competitive incentives as well in order to make sure that companies being interested here, startups and SMEs as well, get involved in this area and cover the necessary investments needed in this area, obviously. So this is an ideal question to move on to our next panel member. I saw your positive reaction to that as well. What is your point of view covering what has been announced from the Brussels side right now? Mr. President, thank you very much for your kind invitation to this very great opportunity of an exchange about this very important topic. Well, what we are seeing from Brussels right now is quite positive in many aspects, but we see this rather here on a local level, especially in our region. So thank you to our minister as well. We see what efforts are being generated here to be actively involved and positioned in order to have a good positioning for the future. What we are still missing from Brussels at ESR level is the interconnection between all. If you have frequency usage rights, well, the German network agency is strongly involved to choose a pragmatical approach. But if we have a look at other nations, simply to France and Italy already, we can find a completely different situation in this area. And we would wish here for a strong involvement to have a coordinating function taken up and to base yourself on a common position between our countries. And this is still missing right now. I can see a lot of positive approaches, very courageous approaches as well. But I would really welcome here an initiative to get into the implementation phase. All those not being directly involved, what is different in France? Just to have an explanation. Concerning frequency, from what satellite would you like to send? Frequencies have to be attributed for that. Every country has its own regulations, and via this regulation you have an ITU, an international regulation, taking up these rights. And in France, this is taking place very slowly, whereas in Germany, the constellation of Elon Musk has been implemented already. It is being used with a testing license, but still, in France, we do not have reached this point yet. So you have still discussions taking place how you can settle this. In Poland, it is the same right now, for instance. So we need more exchange here. I'd like to give this topic immediately to the EU Commission. Are you busy with this already, Mr. Kautz? Well, first of all, this is maybe a bureaucratic answer, but you will get a nicer one afterwards. But the bureaucratic answer, first of all, is that for certain topics we have a very limited competence level on the EU. This is due to the EU treaties, simply. Concerning the coordinating role for frequency usage rights, well, there is, of course, a coordination taking place on a European level in view of the major ITU conferences, world radio conferences taking place in this area. Where it's more difficult then is the coordinating role when individual member states have to decide whether certain operators are being admitted on a certain frequencies. Starlink is one example here, admitted in Germany, not in France yet. So here we are having a closer look at it right now and can make our own publicity, if you like. Normally, together with the Secure Connectivity Initiative, we would like to and we will adopt communication concerning space traffic management. Space traffic management, this is an area where you can make sure that the space traffic is regulated a better way to avoid collisions. But it's a much broader topic. It's also about frequencies here as well. And what will happen when frequency usage rights are being attributed or not. This is one of the questions that will be covered in these communications. Maybe you will find there a first approach to an answer to this topic.
Ja, und jetzt würde ich gerne noch mal zu der politischen Komponente.
Now I would like to say something from the political point of view. How important is it from geopolitical visions that we enter and are working in this field? Thank you very much for the invitation to this meeting. I'm very happy that the representation of Hessen is making this meeting, and we could say what is new, because we have obviously communication via satellites, and now we try now to get nearer to the Earth. This is something technical. This is happening, and it's interesting because we have dynamics. They have a history, and you can go back to the first telegraphic network. There have always been important countries who wanted to control this part, and almost all the time it was something in a common existence, because you can't always say that what Mr. Musk is doing is representing the US. But anyhow, there is some convergency, and there are also connecting lines, and therefore we have distorted market. The whole direct and indirect interventions in China, things are even worse and more difficult to understand, and obviously the state will back his Chinese companies, and we have a geopolitical view on that. We already heard it in Europe, and since some times of strategic autonomy. And we will talk also about digital sovereignty, and we have also 5G and other things. And I think this is a point where we should ask this question once again, and this is something different. Nobody of us can see what the future will bring and what will happen, and some things might not work. And I would say we have a very good perspective that some of the things that are done now will be reality, and we will then have a new dimension of the global infrastructure here. And should this be working, then we have a political argument, and we should try not to depend too much on somebody else. And I don't want to speak too long, but I guess we can also switch to the question, why do we need a European constellation? Because we have next to them what is coming from the US and China. We have, with Huawei, we have property issues, and why do we need a political project coming from the EU? And there are good answers, and this is also what Mr. Kraus was saying. What is the idea? What do we need in the public field? And therefore, we can see how the governance might be, how much money we will have, and why we want to do this. And just a last point, in order to speed up, I guess we have a very good starting point here in Europe, but we have to be careful in order not to be discussing too long, thinking about it too long. We need to speed up, and I guess this is already the second generation of Starlinks, and what we have in the development is something that is difficult then to pick up. Many of them are already blocked fact, I wouldn't say it's too late, but we should do everything to go ahead, because at a certain point it might be too late for the European Union. Well, next question. Do we have an alternative from the different member states like France? Or isn't it that we need cooperation in Europe to get out of this? It is a dimension as far as expertise is concerned. For me, this is a good example for a case where we have really a good argument for European cooperation, and I have to say that's not always very easy, and especially as far as the universe is concerned. And we don't always have a relaxed situation, because there is competitiveness, and we, from Europe, we should really bundle all the forces. And I would be skeptical as far as one country only going ahead is concerned. And maybe somebody might manage it, but it's not sure. And we have seen that this is seen very skeptical, and in France, they are very open to it, and the French Commissioner, Monsieur Breton, said this is the first project for global gateway, and therefore an internet for Africa, and then we are in the exporting part. Is this something you know something about? Is there any change in the opinion? Are people backing all this? I hear obviously from Hessen, ESA, ESAC, and we have a strong contact. And what has already been said, it's technological sovereignty. I'm convinced that we have to offer something in Germany, and we can also agree with France in order to not to be too much dependent. This has to be our goal. We don't want it to go into a dependency. We have technological sovereignty. Why? Because Ms. Krüger said it. We have needs. We have this for the industry 4.0, and we have this also in the mobile connection in the global world. And we had a pact for mobile phones where we decided that especially for the rural areas, we have to do a lot. And in Hessen, we have really a good connection, and we are at over 97%. And therefore, we are one of the federal states that are going ahead. But because we decided also for satellite techniques, and obviously also investments that we made. And therefore, this connectivity in the rural area, plus the long-term perspective for digital and technology. And this is one of the questions you asked. Now, therefore, I think that in Germany we can let's say, insist on this, and we have this topic at the European field because for, as far as ESAC is concerned, we are very sensible to this, and we would hope that other federal countries would enter in this field, because we shouldn't lose any more time. We are already under pressure, and this pressure is something that we have to use in a positive way. Thank you very much, Mrs. Plöger. You are in Berlin. What can you say? Is there already a change because the previous government was a bit skeptical, and obviously because the programs like Galileo and others, and Copernicus, that there wouldn't be enough money. Can you tell us what is happening? Because you for sure have contacts and work at the sensibility in order to enhance the sensibility. Yes, and we have to say the new government is still setting up as far as the digital competencies are concerned, and we had hoped that there will a stronger bundling. That's not the case, but we are looking forward anyhow. And I guess the previous government in the ministry with Mr. Jatzombeck, they already had understood the problem and considered this a third pillar. And Mrs. Christmann, I'm sure that she will go ahead with that. And she met Mr. Breton yesterday here in Brussels, and she will back this disagreement. We are not reluctant as far as technique is concerned, but it's a political approach. How do we want to have all this? If we do need 4 institutions, if we have to work together from the private and the public sector, and when we also have a strong request in order to be anchored in this investment. And Mr. Voelsen, yes, obviously we need a European solution. Nobody was thinking that we wanted to do it alone in Germany. And obviously European projects are very complex and difficult, but we can learn from the errors we made in the past. And we can say that we have a strong competition between Germany and France, and then we should use this as a possibility that we have a French commissioner and he can do this for Europe. And if I'm speaking about competition, I say we have 2 partners and at the same level, and then we have to accept this competition. Mr. Kautz, what are the numbers for these investments? Right now, I'm not allowed to tell you how much this is. But what I can say is what we are envisaging is an intelligent gather together of different budgets, and I'm talking about of a European budget with private money and maybe also something that is coming from the European member states. And when I say we collect the private and the official or the public money, and we have seen different opportunities and possibilities. We already have a competition. This is a commercial market we are using, and we wanted to say, okay, if we create something like this, then we would like to have the industry as a partner, as a public-private partnership, or maybe a concession. And we have some ideas how we can add up money from the European Union with private money, and this would help in financing. And we know there is a big interest from the industry, because we can see clearly that there is a potential, and the situation is completely different. let's say 20 years ago, maybe you remember, when we started to build up Galileo, we thought, okay, we do this with the industry and we have a private-public partnership with the industry, and that didn't work. But it didn't work because the satellite navigation systems, we all only had state offers, and it was very important to build up on this because I will have a commercial system. But now, as this is an important market, it seems clear that we can go ahead with a private-public partnership. Can you just give us an idea, plus minus, how much that might be? You need to wait 2 more weeks and then we can talk about it. Is there anybody else who might give an idea about how much that might be? It's a nice thing. One number, Bezos with Cooper is trying to do something different. And we do not know if this is the right dimension, the right amount, because it's dependent on what we will be doing. But this was a constellation of 10,000s of satellites that would offer the internet for big countries. And if we say that we want to have communication with institutions and special offers from the industry, then this is obviously something different, and probably the costs will be different. You asked, and at least this is one number that they want to offer. Well, I don't want to force you to tell the numbers only, but how can these costs be split up and divided on the different participants? I obviously can't talk about numbers, but the biggest part is the part of the industry, and here we do need in a very important phase to give a backup as a state or public sector in order to bring the project on the track, and we don't want to have classical things. If I have something that is not paid, then nobody will enter. We need also to see the commercial part and understand this commercial part, and therefore we are considering how is the regulation going ahead? How can we find also a stimulus for the market so that the companies enter and they start to build up systems that get some help, but that should then live afterwards on their own. And even in digitalization, we have the state and also the request. This is the classical part that we see in the US, but if I want to be if I want to have success, then I need to give them also a free hand. And just a question, is it probably important that the state is there as an anchor? Is this maybe more important than having the numbers already? I agree with Mrs. Pearl. This is important in different constellations, and I get my money out of it. And the constellation where I have the state client as a client already, I think, okay, but then we should also make the switch, because it's not like today, because our clients are using already satellites, and we do have satellite. We have Eutelsat LCS in Luxembourg, and this is a constellation. And we have this O3B. This is in the different parts, and I guess in this point we have to do a lot in order to bring it into a balance. Such a constellation, once you create it, that can work only if this is really backed at the global level, at the European level, and if you consider like an Airbus Leonardo Telespazio in Italy, and you should also open up from the medium enterprises, because otherwise we have the usual suspects, and this can be avoided if we have a certain structure since from the beginning. Well, I ask on the legal basis, and therefore for responsibility. These are questions that are maybe not so appealing, but anyhow they're important. Well, the basis is the same article that has been chosen. 1892, this is the basis. In this initiative, responsibility, liability, we have a lot of experience thanks to Copernicus and Galileo. And as far as liability is concerned, we will have a similar way like we had for Galileo. Where when we have a delivery for the final client, and if we are participating as a legal entity, and we have liability, and this has then to be done. And what I want to say with that, where if you imagine we have a system that offers two things, services for the public sector, where we are strongly involved, and there are liability questions we have to tackle with, and then we have the other part of the commercial services that are offered from the private part, and I don't think that we will have any liability in this, just to say it briefly. And Copernicus and Galileo, we already mentioned that, and I would like to go back a little bit. What can we learn in these different programs? And if we look back, which are the errors that we should avoid? Now, you're laughing. It's not only me. I think Germany and France that are quarreling in the cosmos is something that makes me laugh, and therefore we are bringing everything also into the universe. And we have already spoken about speed, and I could put one next to the other, and I hope that we might quickly discuss how we can go ahead with this. And Gaia X is a good example that we understood, and therefore sovereignty. We need more independence in Europe as far as clouds are concerned. And it's a very complex process, and it takes a long time. And this is something we have to consider. We have to go ahead quicker, and every time we also have the anchor of the public part, because it should be the responsibility of every state what we consider as sovereignty, not only for the industry, but also for the public sector. And in Germany, we do have the problem as far as the digitalization in administration is lacking behind. And we do need to be, we have to do this, and we should speed up, and we have seen this. It's really 5 minutes to 12, so we have to speed up. The industry already said it's two competencies. One's the idea, this infrastructure and what is connected to it, and to be also ambitious and to offer something on the market and to bring this technology into the market. The same question to you too. And is there some space left for us in the cosmos, in the universe? Because we always think it's huge and will never end. But maybe somebody already has occupied these places. Well, what can we learn from Galileo? One thing is that already in the past, the US was not happy, and this was against the GPS system in the US. And I guess the Atlantic connections should be working. Is there some space? Yes. It's obviously place what for. We have public requests, and we can define this good, but properly. And how can we tackle also with what the economy is, or the economic partners are looking for? Discussions about autonomy, and they are already there. And Mrs. Köhler, you said it, and the idea is similar in the structure, and we have also needs from the public sector. But if we also have German companies saying we define us for cloud office, then this is a very difficult situation, and I'm asking myself if we could still get out something if we would have this strategic discussion in the industry in order to see that in order that we diversify. This would be one point, and where we have more space is if we open up and put everything in the context of the development. We were talking about the European requests and needs, but we have also the global part. And for example, with the European constellation, to have a good offer for the developing countries, then we would have really a big request for what is coming from the US and China. and at the end, we do need it, because it's no use if we don't have a constellation in order only for the little part of Europe. We also need a global approach, and Mr. Kautz probably can say something more about it and what the EU is doing.
Ja, wäre super, wenn Sie dazu was sagen könnten. Also Herr Brut.
Well, Mr. Breton has delivered a more extended view talking about the connections to Africa, and in February there's going to be public announcements as well, obviously. Well, what I can tell you is that in every case our objective would be to have a worldwide coverage. The very nice thing about these LEO constellations is that if you have a satellite in a low orbit, automatically turning around the planet. So if you have sufficient numbers of satellites sent into space, you have a worldwide coverage immediately. So I'm in agreement with you to build such a system to cover Europe. Technically, it doesn't make any sense, and economically, even less. So our objective would indeed be to cover the whole planet with such a system. And as the Commission indicated, we would be interested more particularly in Africa in this context. And what's really interesting concerning Africa is the following. If you see the projections, well, in 2050, the majority of the population of the planet will live in Africa, and it's the same time zone as Europe. So we have the highest level of interest here to cooperate with Africa and to develop connections and competencies with Africa. Maybe I can add a remark also concerning the frequencies and the orbits. It's quite right to say, following your preceding question, whether it's not too late already. Well, we shouldn't be waiting much longer. In any case, we've had a closer look at it. And before launching all this, we had a look at frequencies and orbits still available. It doesn't make any sense to develop such a thing if you can see, well, there's no frequencies left. And so we had a look at it, of course, and we know what's still possible on that level. But one thing is for sure, we have to act now. In 5 years, it's certainly going to be too late. Dear Minister, if you listen to this debate, it's maybe a little bit frustrating to see how slowly things are progressing here. Well, let's say that I'm coming from the economy, and I had the pleasure to develop a digital ministry here as well. In my former life, I've lived through a lot of EU projects, and it is true that once in a while you might get impatient. But you have to say as well that Europe does not constitute a full entity and a unique construction. And we have to choose a common European path with all its side effects. So impatient, yes. But on the other hand, it's a good thing that we foresee a little bit of time for certain processes. But here and there, we should be a little bit more courageous in trying to implement things and be able to act. And so I'm welcoming the fact that the Commission is going to present a proposal in 2 weeks' time, and let's not leave it aside for too long, and let's get together and have a development for European sovereignty in the global competition, and be a little bit strengthened in our position as a European contributor. So all European initiatives and all research projects, and my experience based on that indicates that we have to be quite decisive here and be really self-assured here to say that we're able to do this. So we have to be more courageous in our approach and really go for it and be confident and launch these projects swiftly. But we have to take into account that Europe here and there is composed differently and needs other processes. Well, you certainly hear a political representative indicating such a willingness to add. You wanted to add a technical remark, I reckon. Yes, I've heard a lot of things, and with the impatience, I've talked about from the practitioner's point of view. I don't see the problems in space. The problems are on the Earth, the terrestrial segment. Every gateway is needed down here, and every gateway has 100 or 300 or 500 kilometers as a diameter around it, and it's going to be difficult to place another gateway because due to performance and frequencies, they will be inhibiting each other. If we should place a gateway in Luxembourg, well, automatically parts of Germany, France, Belgium, Switzerland would be left aside because there's this diameter need surrounding the gateway. This is a terrestrial limitation, and the initiatives from the United States are creating facts, and we would be lagging behind. Sorry. Maybe you can be a little bit more precise. You said that facts are being created for all those not knowing this area. Well, what are the others doing already? Advancing us? Well, Starlink, in order to use its constellation, is building gateways in Europe. We do have gateways in Germany and in other countries being built already. And this leads to a situation where we cannot be active in this region again, or it has to be regulated. And this leads me to the Federal Network Agency, where decisions have to be made. Those coming up first have a higher right level to use their frequencies as the ones coming later. And it's not only SpaceX being present already. We have gateways also for OneWeb in Greece and Portugal. They are having bases as well. We have gateways for Empower being built, being present already. So we do have infrastructures on the ground, and these facts have been created already. So for me, it's not so much about LEO, MEO, GEO. It's about the terrestrial side, what's taking place down here if you want to communicate as well. And this leads us to technological sovereignty matters. From my point of view, well, personally, with the positive spirit here as well. We're not so wrongly positioned here. Satellites for OneWeb are built by Airbus. Satellites for another constellation from Telesat from Canada are built by Thales and Telespazio. So we have know-how. We have OPABs in Bremen as well. They are able to build these satellites as well. We have the topic of laser communication. So if it's not about radio frequencies for communication, but laser, so light waves, we have a company even in Germany being active already. So for the core or key technologies, I don't see a dramatic situation against us. And another element to have a look at, and I'm in agreement with Mr. Voelsen here, is to say that we should not arrive at a point where we have only a Me Too constellation like the others, under the cover of technological sovereignty, simply data protection and so on and forth. No, from my point of view, we should rather have an approach where we say this is an incubator for the technology development, for the transmission of rules and values. We are a very attractive market here in Europe, but we don't use it. Each and everyone can come to this market, does not necessarily play along our rules, and these are facts where I say that we have to act, because with such a constellation, our values, our regulations can be foreseen in other areas, in other societies as well in the world, and not only thinking about connectivity, but also on terrestrial observation. These are facts that have to be taken into account as well, or could be taken into account as well, because if I have one constellation, my own constellation, I create my own conscience. What kind of data are being collected? What are the data access possibilities we have? What things are being observed, indicating other aspects here? And such a constellation can be foreseen in the background of a European army as well, because the mission areas with the frigate Bayern right now, we're having started an Asian trip. We need connections there as well. These are scenarios where with our alliances, be it NATO or European alliances as well, could become active as a practitioner involved here. I would like to progress in this discussion and be more concrete concerning implementation steps. Mr. Kautz, did you involve these ideas as well? Will we have answers to all this in your proposal as well? All the aspects we just heard. Well, a certain number of aspects have been mentioned, a whole lot of them concerning the technical side, gateways amongst others. I have to say that the proposal will not involve all technical details or the architecture of the system already. If you have a look at our legislative proposals concerning space. No, but I mean the problems being brought up by gateways from others being installed already. Well, what I wanted to say is that you need gateways, obviously, but the number can be reduced when you have inter-satellite links between the satellites. So the number of gateways can be reduced. But let's put it like this. The proposal will not include all technical, detailed aspects, as I said, but it will take up elements that could be helpful for us. For instance, and it's the case today in the space program, it is indicated that member states will or should support us in order to make sure that the ground infrastructure that we need, well, that it is seen as a critical infrastructure on a national level. So we have articles already helping us in these areas, but the proposal will not include technical details, as I said. Mrs. Minister, what's the importance for you to include SMEs as well? Have you an idea already how this inclusion can take place? Well, for us, or for me personally, rather, it's really important. I launched myself a little company at the time, and as president and digital minister, I've always been pleading for SMEs' interests and startup scenes in Hessen. As I indicated initially, we have CESA as a nucleus to support SMEs as well. So your question was how important it is in my view. Well, it is extremely important because, especially on this interface, Mrs. Plöger mentioned it in Industry 4.0, we've brought up a very nice future opportunity, the fundamentals of our economic activity in Germany being precisely SMEs. Well, you're raising your hand. I wanted to ask you anyway the question for the practitioners. How does it have to be a setup allowing you to think that you have a realistic opportunity again, not only the usual suspects being supported as usual? Yes, indeed. Well, I think that one way or the other, as an SME, you have to be realistic as well and simply take into account the fact that you cannot cover everything by these initiatives. I'm really in favor of cooperation with Airbus, with other big companies where you say, listen, Airbus, you have a mandate for this area. You're making sure that the structure is really delivered, that distribution networks will be also reaching the lower levels of SMEs to have a food chain, if you like, being covered for all levels and areas. This is one dimension. Another dimension would be that as an SME, you become an active member of these constellations in the sense of an incubator. Space debris is another question here, and this is a space matter as well. These initiatives should be covered here as well, and in order to make sure that this becomes a fundamental component here as well. Not to be simply in the hen and the egg question as well, that only the big ones being served and the lower levels don't get a lot reaching up. The innovation cycles are not 8 or 10 years. Now it's rather 2 or 3 years for certain areas. Mrs. Plöger, would you add a remark? This can only be in your interest to have a good level of cooperation between the big and the smaller companies. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I have to speak against the cliche that's only the big ones spreading the activities and do not let the small ones into their ecosystems. The big companies are not sharing this view. And the developments by all levels of companies have not increased in recent years. So the big companies need this intelligent cooperation between SMEs and startups. on the one side, and the big industrial companies. This is a reality already in a lot of sectors. We can see this already. I'm really grateful. I think Mr. Sünberg indicated the competence elements that we have enumerating laser technology, for instance, where we're still leading in the world. And so we have a lot of technologies that are really coming from SME companies and been growing since then, and that can be involved in an even stronger way. But I wanted to come back to the interaction as well on the sovereignty level. This is politically wished for, and more sustainable activity from industry as well. This is going both ways. We've been discussing for quite a while about a systemic competition here, decoupling, what are our partners in the world in order to have common progress. US interests have been mentioned also, but there's always an interaction that's being needed here, and we will never be completely independent, seeing the very complex supply chains and other connections. We will never be completely independent, and there will be a need for strategic partners in the world, so we don't want to have only strategic, digital, or technological sovereignty aspects being taken, that we cannot shut the systems completely down. We have to remain open, but own competence have to be developed for us as a supplier as well. But these offers have to be ready to market. And if we don't manage to do that, and this would be also a matter of regulation, also a matter what framework has to be set up for this. So, Mr. Kautz, it's quite clear. You do have core competencies for certain areas, and for other matters as frequencies, well, this has to be left to other departments within the Commission. The same discussion as in Germany, for instance. But it's important that you still have a common approach here and a close cooperation. If I launch a strategy, but the other partners or the subordinate authorities are not executing this in an adequate way, well, the implementation will be difficult. And implementation is also a matter of speed. The best strategy is not useful if afterwards I do not have all parties involved putting together their efforts for implementation.
Aus dem Publikum.
Now we have a question from one of the people that are following us. As a lawyer, I was working on a satellite system in 20 countries in Europe, and a big problem is the heterogeneous approach for frequencies, and the European Union had world stopping, and this has not been brought ahead. And after this approach, this will be valid in the whole of the EU. Shouldn't we have such an approach once again? I guess the question is interesting and or can be considered by everybody of our participants. I can't give you a direct answer because there is another GD operating in that field. So I don't want to say anything about it. In an abstract manner, we can say one-stop shop, but very often in Europe we don't have the ideal solution. It's not in my GD, so I can't tell you. Would somebody else answer this? Otherwise, I have a second question. Which global governance can help with the legitimate stakeholder rules? Does everybody have an idea about this? Or wants to add something? Yes, please. I would like to come back to the question. The global governance structures, and Mr. Sünberg already talked about ITU and frequencies. This is very important. and actually the procedures in the ITU are coming from a moment where we didn't have so many thousand satellites like today. And as far as I can say or see, this is something difficult for the system, and we should consider what multilateral cooperation we can use. This is something that Europe should considering. This is another part that in the internet governance in what data are flowing. It's a huge thing. We could have a new meeting only about this point. But I would also like to tell you that differently from the old infrastructures, we do have a situation and structure where we have a lot of infrastructure in only one hand in the backbone until the people who are using the internet, like installing, and this is differentiated, and we also have obviously different power structures, and it's a huge question how to tackle with all this. Thank you very much, and this is very important because the proposal in February can't be the only one. And first step, we have a discussion. We have seen it has to be quick, and I would like to say thank you to all of those who were discussing, and I give the floor back to our minister. Thank you very much for moderating all this. It was a very interesting debate where we have seen different aspects of the topic. But one thing is clear, the satellite technique in connectivity in Europe gives us a huge possibility, but we have to speed up because this kind of internet can give us advantages. We were talking about a lot of dimensions and digital sovereignty and about independency that we like to bring ahead. Europe should bring ahead this topic because we are serious, and especially in satellite communication, we are a basis where we do have a more important role, even more important, and we are looking forward to the proposal of the Commission. And from Hesse, we are very happy that all this can be discussed, and we would like also to be a place where satellites are built, because Europe has to be in an internet activity, and we have to be stable, that we not are only digital, we have digital sovereignty and also the right technology, but that we are a site in Europe where we have a right position. Thank you very much. And obviously, I have heard also that Europe is attractive. And this is something very important because we very often are trying to be not so proud of it. And next Monday, we have another meeting on the 31st of January, and this is the first start of a real series of elections, because we have so many in this year, and the next foreseen digital meeting, Digital Leaders Roundtable in Hesse, is on the 22nd of March, 18 to 20, and it's the agriculture in the future. And we hope that we will have some guests here in the representation of Hesse. It's not guaranteed yet. We hope that might be possible. And we are looking forward to it. Thank you very much for watching and stay safe.